Oh my God, in that early morning mist, he saw something no one dared to believe. Once upon a time, on the shores of the Caribbean Sea, there lived a fisherman named Kwame, a man whose entire life was bound to the waves. He was familiar with hardship, with the mysteries of the ocean, but never had his heart clenched as it did on that morning. In the shallow waters, beneath the faint glow of dawn, a golden-scaled mermaid was dying, clutching a newborn baby tightly in her arms. Crimson blood spread across the surface of the water. Her eyes pleaded, her breath faint and fragile, like the ocean's final whisper. "Fisherman, please raise my child so it may live." From that moment, Kwame knew his life, and the life of the entire village would never be the same again. That day, the Caribbean Sea was shrouded in mist, as though the ancient spirits of the ancestors were concealing something behind a veil of white smoke. Kwame, the man the entire village called the Son of the Waves, rowed his boat out to sea as he had done every other morning. For 40 years, he had lived with the ocean, listened to the wind, learned to read the language of the waves, and accepted solitude as part of his fate. Since the day his wife had passed, the small hut on the red sands echoed only with the whistle of the wind through bamboo walls, and his heart was as hollow as the ocean at low tide. But that morning, before the dawnlight had fully touched the water, something made him pause his oar. In the shallow waters, where the sweet river met the bitter salt of the sea, he saw an unimaginable sight. A slender figure, her golden scales shimmering as though forged from the very sun itself, was slowly sinking. The water around her had turned crimson, blood mingling with the small waves, spreading like a massive wound of the ocean itself. Kwame shuddered. All his life adrift, he had seen strange lights beneath the waves, heard mysterious echoes in moonless nights. But never once had he seen a half-human, half-fish creature before his very eyes, and she was dying. Clutched against her chest was a newborn child, with soft brown skin and tiny curls, wailing hoarsely as though trying to hold on to its mother's fading life. Kwame cast his net aside and plunged into the water, his aged legs trembling beneath the weight of the moment. As he lifted her up, her eyes opened black, bottomless, like the depths of the ocean. Not fear, not despair, but a silent plea, both painful and sacred. In an instant, he saw himself from years ago, when he cradled his fever-stricken wife, powerless as love slipped away. The mermaid's trembling hand pressed a seashell into Kwame's calloused palm. It glowed, radiating a golden light that pulsed gently like a living heart. He felt warmth sear through his skin, as though that small object carried the very soul of the sea. His own heart pounded, for he knew this moment would change everything in the rest of his life. The child stopped crying when it touched his chest, its gentle breath merging with the sound of the waves. Kwame knew from this moment responsibility had fallen upon his shoulders. He was no longer just a lonely man, living with memories and empty winds. He had been entrusted with a life, a strange gift in which both sea and land had placed their faith. His hands trembled as he held the baby close, his heart aching as if torn in two. He had no milk. He had no wife to share the burden of nurturing. But he remembered Mama Zola in the village, the woman who had lost her child just 3 days earlier, her breasts heavy with milk while her eyes were hollow like ash. Perhaps heaven had sent this child to heal them both. Before the mermaid's body dissolved into foam, he heard an echo in his heart, not her voice, but as though the waves themselves whispered in his ear. "Raise it in truth, not in fear. When this light fades, the choice will belong to it alone." Kwame did not fully understand, but the words carved themselves deep into his soul. The mermaid vanished, leaving behind only the salt of the sea, the radiant shell in his palm, and the small child breathing softly. He looked at the baby once more, its glistening eyes seemed to hold the entire night sky. A single tear rolled down the rough cheek of the man who had long lost faith in miracles. He named the child Ayana, which means gift of God. and as he whispered that name, Kwame knew he had stepped through a doorway from which there was no return. The red sands remained silent, the mangrove still whispered, the waves still surged. But within the old man's heart, a new journey had begun. A journey not only for himself, but for the entire village, for the vast ocean itself. Was Ayana merely a child entrusted by the sea, or was she the messenger destined to unite two worlds? And now, my dear audience, stay tuned for a story that will leave you in awe. Take just a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly resonate with what I've shared here. And leave a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see people join us from every corner of the world. When Kwame carried the baby out of the water, the morning mist seemed to thicken, enveloping the path back to the village. His heart felt heavy, as though he was carrying both a sacred gift and a secret the sea had forced upon him to keep. The child lay snug in his arms, tiny yet warm, its soft breath like the steady rhythm of waves lapping against the shore. In those tightly shut eyes, there still seemed to flicker a faint golden glow, reflecting from the seashell hidden in Kwame's pocket. The path that led to the familiar Caribbean fishing village suddenly felt weightier with every step he took. Every thatched roof, every net drying on the sand, every pair of eyes he was about to meet might turn into questions. How would he explain the baby? He knew well, the truth of a mermaid could never be easily accepted. People might revere the sea, but that faith was as fragile as sea foam, ready to shatter into doubt and fear. When he entered the village, all eyes immediately turned to him. A newborn in the arms of a lonely old man was nothing less than an unanswered riddle. The women stopped cutting fish, the children ceased their play, and the elders raised their heads from the chessboard. A brief silence swept across the place, broken only by the sound of waves rolling in from afar. Then, from the last hut of the village, Mama Zola appeared. She had once been a strong woman, her smile brightening the entire fish market. But since the death of her little son from illness, that smile had vanished, leaving only a hollow emptiness in her eyes. Her breasts were swollen with milk, but there was no child to feed, and both the grief and the milk tormented her day and night. When Mama Zola's gaze met the baby in Kwame's arms, her body trembled. Tears streamed down her face as she rushed forward, her hands shaking yet strong as they held the child. Her sobs mingled with the infant's soft cries, as though two lost souls had just found one another. When the tiny lips latched onto her breast, the milk flowed, carrying with it both solace and healing. In that moment, a miracle revealed itself not from distant gods, but from the communion of pain and love. The villagers who witnessed the scene wept openly. They whispered that the child was a gift from the sea, a sign that the spirits had never abandoned them. Experienced fishermen said the moonlight on the ocean the night before had been a good omen. Mothers believed the child brought new hope, replacing the losses that disease had taken from them. Kwame remained silent, his head bowed. He did not tell the whole truth. He only said simply that the baby's mother had died giving birth and had entrusted the child to him. It was not a complete lie, but neither was it the full truth. He knew some things could not be spoken too soon. The sea had given him this responsibility, and he had to uphold the condition laid upon him, even as guilt gnawed at his heart. The baby was named Ayana, meaning gift of God. The name spread through the small village like a sweet song, at once strange and familiar. From then on, Ayana became part of the community, raised not only by Kwame and Mama Zola, but by the entire village. The little girl quickly captured everyone's hearts. Her dark eyes, as deep as the night sea, carried a mysterious pull as if they reflected countless secrets never told. Under the moonlight, her brown skin glimmered with a soft golden sheen, prompting whispers that she bore the blessings of the ocean. Each time Ayana laughed, the grief in Mama Zola's heart eased. Each time she grasped Kwame's hand, the old man felt his loneliness dissolve. The whole village gradually came to see Ayana as a symbol of hope. They believed her presence promised bountiful catches, calm waves, and seasons free from storms. They knew nothing of the harsh conditions the sea had set. They only knew that since the day the child arrived, the wind along the red sands felt gentler, and the waves offshore seemed less fierce. In the deep nights, when the entire village slept, Kwame would often sit alone, taking the seashell from its hiding place. Its golden light pulsed like a beating heart, in rhythm with the peaceful breath of the child sleeping inside the hut. He knew well, every miracle carried its price. But he also understood that the love Ayana received from the village was the very foundation that would allow her to one day face her extraordinary destiny. From her very first days of learning to walk, Ayana radiated a strange light that no one could deny. She did not cry and fuss as much as other children her age, but whenever she raised her voice, the sound carried something uncanny, echoing like waves rolling from some distant place. The elders of the village shook their heads and whispered that this child carried within her the soul of the waves. Women who held her in their arms often startled, for the warmth radiating from her small body was unlike any ordinary warmth. It felt like a sea breeze brushing against them, both salty and sweet, both familiar and foreign. By the age of 5, Ayana had begun to reveal abilities that defied explanation. One morning, as the fisherman prepared to set out, Ayana suddenly stood still on the red sands, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Her childish voice, soft yet resolute, "In 3 days, the storm will come." The adults laughed at first, dismissing it as a child's idle words. Yet, 3 days later, fierce winds rose, black clouds rolled in, and the sea roared with thunderous waves. Thanks to her warning, the villagers had hidden their boats in safety, spared from a tempest that could have swept everything away. After that day, no one dared dismiss Ayana's words. They believed she possessed a secret communion with the sea. The fishermen began to look at her as though she were a living lighthouse, a silent beacon foretelling what was to come. The wonders did not stop there. Many times, when Ayana went with Kwame to the shallow waters to haul in nets, schools of fish would swim straight toward them, crowding together as if drawn by an unseen force. Without much effort, the nets were always brimming, leaving the villagers both delighted and unsettled. Some murmured that the sea was repaying them through this child. Others whispered in fear. Perhaps the spirits had sent a messenger to test them. Kwame remained silent, neither explaining nor denying. Inside him, guilt weighed heavier than joy. He knew well that every strange sign from Ayana was no accident. They were bound tightly to the secret he was forced to keep, to the seashell still lying beneath the woven mat, glowing faintly like the sigh of a heartbeat. The strangest thing, and what troubled him most, was Ayana's reaction whenever she approached deeper waters. Each time the children of the village ran to play by the shore, Ayana would rush with them, laughing in rhythm with the waves. But the instant her feet touched that invisible boundary between shallow and deep, her body froze. Her eyes widened, her whole frame trembling. Then she slowly backed away as if an unseen hand were pulling her back. No one else could see anything there, but Ayana whispered, "Something stops me. I cannot." The other children laughed and over time began to tease her. They dove into the waves, swam far out, and turned back to call her. She could only stand at the shore, her eyes brimming with tears torn between fear and longing. Within her was a fierce pull toward the deep sea, yet at the same time an invisible wall barred her path. It was not simple fear, but a mysterious warning etched into her very blood, "Not yet." Each time Kwame saw her standing frozen at the water's edge, his heart clenched. He understood at once. This was the first condition the mermaid had left behind. Ayana could not enter the deep until fate allowed it, and each time when they returned to the hut, he would open the seashell. It throbbed violently, the light within it pulsing fast like an anxious heart, reminding him that the covenant still held that his burden was heavier than ever. As time passed, Ayana's strange sensitivity to the sea only deepened. She often sat for hours by the shore, eyes closed, as though listening to an invisible symphony. At times, she would leap up, rushing to warn the fishermen to pull in their nets before a great wave struck, and she was always right, with precision that left the village astonished. People began to whisper that she was not merely blessed by the sea, but the daughter of the sea itself. Kwame heard their words and his soul churned. He wanted to shout and deny it, but he knew he could not. The truth was too vast for him alone to resist. What he feared was not the truth itself being revealed, but that Ayana would have to face it too soon before she was strong enough to understand. Every night, after Ayana had fallen asleep, Kwame sat alone by the glow of the oil lamp. He gazed at the gentle face of the child and asked himself, how much longer could he keep this secret? And when that day came, would he have the courage to let go, to allow her to step into the fate the sea had written for her? The village grew more and more trusting of Ayana, but that trust carried dangers of its own. A child too different, no matter how loved, could still become a thorn in the eyes of those who feared what they could not comprehend. Kwame knew that with each passing day, it became harder for him to shield Ayana from the scrutinizing gaze of the community. Ayana grew with powers as strange as signs of destiny. Yet deep inside, she was still only a child, yearning to belong, to play, to be free like the others. And it was that very conflict between an inescapable difference and the desire for a simple, ordinary life that planted the first cracks within her tender soul. From the age of 10, Ayana began to feel something changing within her own body. It was no longer just premonitions of storms or schools of fish, but a strange, lingering urge that stirred deep within her chest, rising each nightfall. On moonlit nights, when the village was fast asleep, Ayana would often awaken, quietly stepping out of the hut, letting the cold sand slip beneath her feet. Before her, the sea stretched vast and mysterious, like a giant mirror reflecting the starry sky. It was then, from the depths, that wondrous sounds began to rise. At first, only low notes like the rhythm of waves breaking, but gradually they grew into clear, haunting melodies, as though someone was singing beneath the sea. That voice was unlike any Ayana had ever heard. Soft as silk, yet as fierce as waves, foreign yet familiar, like kin from ages past. Each time the melody rose, her heart raced, her legs trembled, and she longed to hurl herself into the dark waters. By day, Ayana tried to blend into life with the other children of the village. She still ran, still laughed with their games, but her eyes would often drift toward the sea as if pulled by an invisible thread. In those moments, she felt out of place. She loved her father, her village, the warm arms that had raised her, but at the same time, part of her did not belong here. That part was like an undertow, hidden and silent, waiting for the day to surge. Kwame noticed the changes in his daughter. He saw her eyes shine whenever the sea breeze touched her, her hands reaching out as if to grasp an unseen world. His worries deepened. He remembered the mermaid's warning, never to lie, but never to reveal the truth too soon, for that truth could become an unbearable weight upon a young heart. One night, as Ayana stood quietly at the shore, her eyes fixed on the distance, the mysterious melody echoed again. Unable to hold it in, she turned to her father, her voice small, like a confession. "Why am I different from the other children? Why does the water call me, yet hold me back?" Kwame froze. In her eyes, he saw not only fear, but a burning desire to understand herself. Yet he knew that a blunt answer could shatter her childhood. He knelt, held her close, letting the sea wind scatter his salt-streaked hair. He whispered, like a vow that could not be broken, "You are my daughter, but you also carry a secret within you. Be patient one day, you will understand." Ayana pressed her face against his chest, listening to his pounding heartbeat. Yet deep within, the melody still rang, urging her on. It made her both afraid and restless, like a bird trapped in a cage, knowing the sky lay wide beyond, but its wings remained bound. That night, while Kwame slept, Ayana lay awake. Beneath the worn mat, she heard the seashell's familiar hum. It was faint, but enough for her to feel it. It seemed to answer the song from the sea, as though two distant voices were conversing in a secret tongue. Ayana closed her eyes and listened. The song from the sea drew near and faded away, at times soothing like a lullaby, at times fierce as though calling her name. It stirred her mind like a storm, as though countless memories not her own were flooding in. Images of shimmering scales, flowing hair beneath the water, cities sunken under waves, all appeared like dreams untold. Kwame stirred in his sleep and suddenly heard the seashells hum. He woke and looked toward Ayana. She lay there, eyes closed, but her lips moved, singing along with an invisible song. Beneath the moonlight, her skin glowed with golden shimmer, so radiant it took his breath away. In that moment, Kwame knew he had little time left. What the sea had planted within Ayana was growing stronger, and one day soon, she would have to face its call. He could only pray that when that day came, she would be strong enough not to be consumed. And with each passing day, the melody grew clearer, more insistent, as though the sea itself no longer wished to wait. Would Ayana have the courage to break through the invisible barrier, or would the call of the sea sweep her into a fate she could never escape? Can you guess what will happen next? Take a moment, relax, and drop a comment with the number 1, or simply, "I'm still here to keep listening." When Ayana turned 15, the changes within her could no longer be hidden. Night after night, as moonlight spilled across the sea, she sank into strange dreams, more vivid than any waking reality. In those dreams, her body grew light as silk, her legs transforming into a shining silver tail, glittering like 1,000 broken fragments of the moon. She swam through the depths of the ocean, where coral cities glowed like visions of paradise. Around her were beautiful women, their hair drifting in the currents, their eyes as deep as the heavens themselves. They reached out to her, calling her sister, their voices ringing like the songs of the water. In those moments, Ayana felt she belonged there more than anywhere else. When she awoke, the scent of salt still clung to her hair, her chest rising and falling as though she had swum for hours. She dared not tell her father, but the light in her eyes each time she remembered betrayed her secret. Kwame knew the truth was drawing closer than ever. He feared it, for his daughter was no longer only hearing the voices, she was beginning to live among them in her dreams, and that meant the secret was no longer asleep. By day, Ayana still ran and laughed with her friends on the sand, still helped untangle nets or warned the villagers of coming storms. Yet more and more whispers followed her as she passed. "That girl foretells storms. She speaks with the fish. Her eyes are not like ours." What began as curiosity slowly sharpened into unease. In a small community bound by faith and unity, any difference could become a fracture. Kwame heard it all but chose silence. He knew too well how easily collective fear could turn. He had seen before how a strange child or an unfamiliar ritual could become cause enough for people to turn their backs. He could not let that happen to Ayana, the child he had saved, the child he loved more than himself. But Ayana was no longer the child who could quietly hide behind her father. She began to sense her own strangeness. Each time she stood before the sea, her body trembled, as if the water itself was calling. When the other children swam in the shallows, she felt torn, by instinct pushed to go beyond, yet held back by an unseen force that chained her to the shore. The conflict left her both longing and afraid, like a bird staring at the open sky while its wings remained shackled. One night, the dream became so real, she could no longer call it imagination. In the dream, the women with their shimmering tails did not just call her sister. They whispered, "The blood of the sea flows within you. Do not fear. This is your true home." The words jolted her awake, her whole body trembling. Moonlight fell across her face, and she knew she could no longer avoid the greatest question. Who was she, truly? Kwame watched his daughter grow distant. He saw her gaze sink deeper into the sea, her smile fade when the waves roared. One night, Ayana stood on the red sands, her silhouette stretched long in the moonlight, her arms spread wide as though she were about to fall into the sea's embrace. Kwame knew it was time to speak, but his chest was heavy. All he could do was place a hand on her shoulder, gripping gently, as if holding on to this piece of his life for just a little longer. The next day, the rumors spread wider. Some claimed they saw Ayana singing alone at the shore, and the fish offshore leapt as if in answer to her song. Others swore her eyes glowed in the dark. Even Mama Zola, the woman who had once nursed Ayana, sighed, her eyes veiling a worry she could not voice. The village began to look at Ayana with a mix of love and caution, as though she were both a blessing and a possible omen. Ayana felt it all. She loved the village, the arms that had nurtured her, but she could not silence her heart's question. If her blood did not wholly belong to them, then where was her true origin? She began to wonder if the secret her father guarded was the answer to it all. The seashell in the corner of their hut still pulsed whenever the sea called. Its sound was no longer unfamiliar, but a reminder that destiny was drawing near. Each night, its hum kept Ayana awake, her heart aching with both yearning and dread. Kwame knew the day of reckoning had come, but he clung to what little peace remained. He prayed his daughter would be strong enough to bear the truth that when the sea finally opened its gates, Ayana would know how to choose between love and origin. And so, in the stillness of a moonlit night, Ayana stepped toward the sea. The melody rose louder than ever, and her heart blazed with a question she could no longer avoid. The storm came in the final days before Ayana's 18th birthday, fiercer than any tempest the villagers had ever witnessed. The sky churned with black clouds, waves rose like towering walls, and white columns of water seemed intent on swallowing the coastal village whole. The wind shrieked through the thatched roofs, carrying with it the taste of salt and the scent of fear. The people were no strangers to storms, but this time, in their eyes gleamed something more than worry, a dark premonition that this calamity was beyond human strength. Amid the chaos, a desperate cry for help rose above the roaring waves. It was Kojo, the boy her age, who had grown up alongside Ayana since childhood. They saw only his figure swept away from the coral reef, his small body adrift against the raging sea. His call was faint, yet it cut through the gale like a blade. Ayana did not hesitate. Her feet leapt from the red sands, plunging straight into the churning surf. Every drop of seawater striking her skin felt like a command, like an urging from the depths of her own being. This was the moment her heart had awaited through years of torment by the sea's mysterious call. The invisible wall that had barred her since childhood now trembled. The waves no longer crashed upon her but parted like a path, the waters glowing with golden light, radiant against the gray storm. In that instant, Ayana understood. Her body was not that of an ordinary human. The breath in her chest became powerful surges. Her lungs welcomed seawater as though it were air. Her eyes opened wide within the dark currents, yet she could see every whirlpool clearly. The golden light around her spread, an aura of warmth in the darkness, guiding her swiftly toward Kojo. On the shore, Kwame stood frozen. He saw his daughter transforming, revealing the very power he had tried so long to conceal. Terror crushed his heart. If Ayana crossed that boundary, all secrets would be washed away, impossible to contain. With the last strength in his body, he hurled himself into the water, gripping her hand just as the light around her flared. It was a collision of two worlds. Ayana cried out, her voice tearing into the storm, "I can save him, Papa." But Kwame clutched her hand tighter, his eyes filled with the despair of a father terrified of losing his child forever to the sea. And as he pulled her back, the light around her vanished, leaving only cold darkness to consume the moment. Kojo was saved by other fishermen who braved the storm in their boats. The village exhaled in relief when they saw him return, shivering, pale, but alive. They gathered to tend to him, few noticing Ayana collapsed on the sand, trembling violently. Her tears mixed with the rain as she crumpled by the shore, her heart torn in two. Through her broken sobs, Ayana whispered, "You stopped me, Father. In that moment, I knew who I was, but now it's gone. Her voice faded into the wind, like a fragile thread snapped in silence. Kwame stood behind her, his hands still trembling with fear. He knew he had saved Ayana from the sea, but in doing so, he had extinguished the very spark that could have given her freedom. And in her eyes, for the first time, he saw not only sorrow, but a distance, an unbridgeable distance of a soul already drifting away, seeking the place it truly belonged. That night, when the storm passed, the sea left ruins behind. But within Ayana, the storm had only begun. She knew with certainty, had she not been stopped, she would have saved Kojo. She had touched the secret that had always threatened to burst forth, that she was not only Kwame's daughter, but also a child of the deep. Kwame quietly placed the seashell beside his daughter's bed, hoping it might soothe her. But the shell sang a mournful song, a sound of reproach, as if to declare nothing could stop the awakening of her blood. In the small hut, father and daughter sat in silence. Between them stretched a void that could not be filled, one desperate to hold on, the other yearning to let go. Outside, the sea still sang. And to my dear audience, stay tuned for the next chapter that will leave you in awe. Take just a moment to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It is always fascinating to see people joining us from every corner of the world. The night after the storm, the sea lay eerily calm, as if it too had exhausted itself after the raging tempest. But within Ayana, the waves still roared. She could not sleep, only sat silently in the small hut, her trembling hands touching the old seashell. The object that once sang with life now lay mute, cold as a lifeless stone. Its silence was like the final knock at the door, urging her to rise and step forward. When Kwame realized his daughter was gone, he rushed outside, the roof still dripping with rain, leaving pale streaks beneath the fractured moonlight. Wet footprints marked the sand, leading straight toward the open sea. He chased after them, his heart pounding wildly, torn between dread and the knowledge that this moment had been destined all along. By the shore, Ayana stood alone, her small figure facing the infinite ocean. Before her, the horizon flushed with the pale pink of the coming dawn, light slowly prying the sky apart from the sea. The early wind lifted her dew-soaked hair, revealing eyes ablaze with gold. From her bare feet, streaks of light began to spread, trembling through her body. The invisible boundary that had held her all her life was dissolving. Ayana turned back, her face a blend of fear and liberation. Her voice quivered, yet each word rang out like a call to return. I remember now. My true name is Nia, child of the morning star, daughter of the deep. Kwame collapsed to his knees, tears streaming. He had feared this moment, yet knew he could not escape it. The instant Ayana spoke her true name, the sea stirred. From the abyss, figures emerged, shimmering like silver ribbons. Women with glittering scales, their eyes as fathomless as the night sea. Their voices rose together, resonant and unyielding, calling Ayana home. It was more than a song, it was a hymn carved into her very blood, making her whole body tremble with equal parts yearning and terror. On the shore, the villagers gathered, silent witnesses to a vision no one had ever seen. They whispered, "The mermaid, the daughter of the sea," all mixed with confusion. Between two worlds, Ayana stood, the point where every gaze converged. Kwame cried out, his voice raw, "Please, before you decide, listen to the truth." He spoke, each word halting yet resolute. Many years ago, he had met a mermaid during a storm. When he believed he would drown, she had saved his life in exchange for a covenant. 3 conditions were laid to keep the balance. First, the child must not enter deep waters until the time was right. Second, the father must not deceive the child, but could not reveal everything until the destined moment. And third, when the child remembered all, the father must let go, allowing the child to choose, not between worlds, but to learn how to embrace them both. Kwame's voice broke as he wept, his trembling hands reaching toward his daughter, as if to hold her, yet knowing that holding on was no longer a choice. At that moment, the seashell Ayana carried suddenly flared with light, for the first time since the storm. But this light was not the somber glow, nor the fierce gold of before. It radiated warmth, like the dawn painting the sea with rose hues. It shone upon Ayana, upon Kwame, and even upon the mermaids beyond the waves. Every gaze met within that shared halo, as though the moment itself transcended the bounds of land and water. Ayana closed her eyes. Memories flooded back. The times she had heard the sea's call, the strange dreams of sisters with silver tails, the days she grew beneath her father's watchful eyes that always hid the truth. Each piece fell into place, revealing that her life had never belonged solely to one shore or one tide. When she opened her eyes, her pupils reflected both the light of the land and the depths of the ocean. Before her, two worlds awaited. Behind her, a father in tears begged for her to stay. Ahead, the sea sang with the language of blood. In that instant, Ayana understood. Her choice would not only decide her fate, but shape the fragile balance between two worlds that had never belonged to one another. In that moment, time seemed to stop. The sun had already risen high, spilling golden light across the sea, still scarred by the storm. Yet every eye was fixed on Ayana, or rather Nia, the name awakened after so many years of silence. Before her, two worlds awaited. One, the call of the deep, singing with the melody of blood. The other, her father's tearful eyes, filled with both the fear of loss and immeasurable love. Behind her, the small fishing village stood bewildered, its people's gaze heavy with both hope and uncertainty. Between shore and tide, the girl stood still, carrying within her the soul of both realms. Nia closed her eyes, letting the early wind weave through her hair, letting memories flood back. She remembered the nights her father lulled her with stories that never seemed whole, the strange dreams from childhood when her tiny feet already yearned for salt water. She remembered the moment she rushed to save Kojo, the golden light bursting within her body, only to be pulled back by her father's fear. All of it surged like a current she could no longer resist, and now she stood at a choice no one could bear for her. The seashell in her hand blazed, spilling ribbons of golden light that spiraled around her body. Her skin shimmered at times soft as human flesh, at times glistening like scales. Each heartbeat fused with the rhythm of the waves. Each breath carried both the scent of salt and the fragrance of earth. It was no longer conflict, but union. When she opened her eyes, her pupils bore both colors, the deep blue of the sea and the warm brown of the land. Nia looked at her father, at the mermaids encircling her, and at the small village where she had grown up. Her voice rose, soft yet unwavering, a vow to destiny itself. My mother was wise. To serve the sea, I must understand the land. To love the land, I must know the power of the sea. I choose both. As her words rang out, her body ignited with radiant light. In the next instant, Nia was no longer solely human, nor solely mermaid. She was the fusion of both a figure with strong legs standing on the sand and silver scales shimmering beneath the water. She was the threshold, the bridge that two worlds had long believed impossible to touch. The sea stirred not in fury, but with steady waves, like a nod of approval. The mermaids lifted their song, no longer a call of possession, but a hymn of praise for her choice. From the village, the fishermen sank to their knees, trembling between fear and reverence. They knew, from this day forward, storms would not only be heralded by winds or clouds, but by the presence of a girl, a soul of both realms, guiding them. From that day, the village changed. Each fishing season grew more abundant, their nets heavy with gleaming fish. When the skies darkened with storm clouds, the strange rhythm of the waves became a warning, and the villagers saved their boats in time. They whispered among themselves that in every song of the sea, in every breath of the wind, Nia was present. She never disappeared, but remained there on the fragile line between land and sea. As for Kwame, he was no longer a father torn between secrets and truth. He understood now. He had not lost his child, but raised a soul that transcended the limits of humanity. Each time he stood on the shore watching the ocean, he no longer feared, but felt peace, for wherever the sea sang, his daughter lived. On one golden evening, as the sun gilded the water and seabirds sliced across the sky, people said they could glimpse a slender figure walking along the shore. Her feet left prints on the sand, while a silver tail shimmered just beneath the waves. Her eyes turned both ways toward the endless deep and toward the beloved village. That was the figure of Nia, the keeper of the threshold, the one who bound two worlds once thought forever apart. From then on, her story was no longer the secret of a single family, but the legend of the Caribbean. No longer whispers of doubt, but tales passed to children as inheritance, that there once was a girl who carried the blood of both sea and land, who chose not to abandon either, but to learn how to love and preserve them both. And whenever the waves crash upon the shore with a sound like singing, people still ask themselves, if it were them standing between two worlds, would they have the courage to choose as Nia did? The sea gradually grew calm, leaving only the rhythmic sound of waves, like a lullaby sung by time itself. Nia's silhouette lingered upon the shore, sometimes human, sometimes mermaid, a testament that boundaries are not always meant to divide, but to connect. Her story closed in peace, yet at the same time opened countless questions with no answers. One day, when the sea rages again, what new trial will Nia face? Do the secrets of the ocean's depths truly end here, or have they only just begun to unfold? From Nia's journey, we draw a greater lesson. We do not need to abandon part of ourselves in order to survive. Sometimes, it is the courage to embrace seemingly opposing sides that allows us to become our most complete selves. That is the power of love and bravery, the gift of healing for souls once torn between choices. And now, the question is for you, the ones who have followed this story. If you stood between two worlds, would you choose one side? Or would you be as courageous as Nia, walking the boundary and turning it into strength? Share your thoughts in the comments, because every perspective offers a new way of seeing this journey. If you wish to discover Nia's next challenges, the secrets still hidden in the depths of the Caribbean, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, share this story with friends, and leave your mark in the comments. Perhaps your ideas will shape the path of part 2 of this legend. Thank you for journeying with us. And don't forget, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see people joining us from all around the world. Comment 1 if you enjoyed the story, so we can continue bringing you many more tales like this.